Okay, well, I think we're on page 1094. Don't get too upset because it's still the first page because there aren't so many verses. I think there's probably only 3 pages here actually. Yeah, there's only 3 pages in the whole Parsha. So it's gonna be okay, right? Yesterday, the last thing we spoke about was that the last verse that we spoke about was that Moshe gave the Torah over. Right. So let's have a look and see what the next psukim, what they're going to teach us. Verse number 10. Vayitzav Moshe Yisam Leimo Mikeid Sheva Shanim B'moed Shnas HaShmita B'Chag HaSukkos. We've got a very special mitzvah that's being commanded upon the Jewish people, which is a mitzvah, something called Hakel. What is Hakel? On Sukkos after Shemitah. Right, so this year, in Rosh Hashanah, Mitzvah Hashem, next week, we're going to move into the Shemitah year. The year after Shemitah, immediately after Shemitah, at the end of Sukkot, there was a moment where everybody came together to Yerushalayim, and the king had to read special verses from the Torah to the rest of to all of the Jewish people. We'll learn about it. Let's see what we've got. So, Vayitzav Moshe Yisam Leimo Mikeid Sheva Shanim B'moed Shnas HaShmita B'Chag HaSukkos B'voy Kol Yisrael Ha'roises Pnei Hashem Elokecha B'mokim Asher Yivcha. Because everybody's there already, right? Sukkot is one of the foot festivals, right? So, Tikra es HaTorah Hazois Neged Kol Yisrael B'Oznehem. The Torah has to be read to everybody.
What does it mean, in their ears?
In their ear. We'll talk about it in a minute. Hold on a second, right? What would happen was the area would be cleared. They would build what's called a bima. How do you say that? Like a dais, whatever it's called. Is that what it's called? Yeah, like a platform. They would build a platform. And the king would get up onto the platform and he would read certain psukim from the Torah out loud to everybody. And all of the Jewish people would be crammed into the area and they would be listening to the king. But listen, there's some interesting thing. All right, so you want to know why it says ears? We'll talk about that in a moment, in Mitzvah Hashem, right? But look what's going on. It gets even stranger. Verse number 12. Hakel es ha'am. Bring everybody together. Hakel means to gather everybody together. Yeah. Who? Anashim v'anashim v'ataf. V'gecha asher b'shorecha. Everybody, men, women, children, strangers. Leman yishmu uleman yemudu ve'ores Hashem Elokeichem v'shamu la'asois kol divrei Torah azois. In order that everybody should hear the Torah, everybody should learn the Torah, and everybody should be together listening to this. So, I mean, you realize by yourselves, I hope, that the idea of being told to bring children, we're talking about all children, right? Little children as well. If the whole function of listening to this is what is Laman Yishmu v'Laman Yilmudu, that they should hear and they should learn and they should see. So what do you bring your little children for? They're not picking anything up over here. They're going to cry. They're going to quite the opposite, right? They're going to take away the distraction. They're going to distract everybody because
you're bringing your kids to make it exciting, to show the excitement of what you're about to receive.
No.
And therefore, it's something that's going to be passed on to them. And by taking them there, it's like this is your...
Very nice. Here. So let's try to work it out because there's something very, very beautiful going on over here. We'll come back to the ears in a minute, right? Here, Rashi says, again, he's citing one of the Masechta Soifrim, and he says like this, that if the men and the women have to come to this ceremony, then who's going to look after their kids? They got to bring their kids anyway, because both the men and the women were commanded to come and be a part of all of this. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his great wisdom, what does he do? Aside from that, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his great wisdom, what does he do? He turns bringing the children into a mitzvah, which is the parents are commanded to come to Hakel, and they're commanded to bring their children as well, which they're going to have to do anyway, because no one's going to be able to look after them, right? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu now turns it into a mitzvah, which means that not only are they getting a mitzvah for turning up themselves, the parents, but they're getting a mitzvah for bringing their children as well. However, we're still stuck with the question. You bring a bunch of little children, you're probably talking about, tens and thousands of children. Maybe even more, right? I mean...
Is it sense to the next generation after the generation that's written there? As in the line of tradition?
Yes.
That we're talking about receiving the Torah.
Yes.
So therefore, by them being there, they're also part of this covenant.
So explain the Meforshim like this, the most beautiful idea. What are the children doing there? If you got to bring them anyway, good. But how are we gonna take care of this business of they're going to be making noise, they're going to be distracting their parents. So the idea is no, that the children need to be a part of this as much as the adults, because the children are going to be the ones that are going to take the tradition and they're going to live with that tradition afterwards. Like Seder night. So much emphasis is placed on the children at Seder night, to the point where the Gemara says, why do we do this and why do we do that? And the answer of the Gemara is to make the children ask questions. Right? The children need to be stimulated in order to want to be there at Seder night, in order to be able to have their own Seder night later on. Right? And over here, the children are being told to come to the ceremony. Are they going to pay attention? They won't pay attention. If you're lucky, they'll be quiet, right? Are they going to pay attention? No. Are they going to listen to what the king is saying? No. Are they going to learn? No. So why are they there? In order to be impressed by what's going on. That's gonna leave an impact on them. That's going to leave an impression on them that won't be able to be taken away. And they see that their parents have come all this way and they're all squished in over there and it's uncomfortable and they're all there in order to hear the king read, and that's all they know. They don't know anything else, right? Various psukim. There's a whole discussion in the Gemara about whether he reads the whole of Sefer Devarim, whether he reads only various verses from inside of it. Again, it's interesting. The idea over here has got a lot less to do with what the king is reading, right? I don't want to be misunderstood over here. I really don't. Please do not misunderstand what I'm about to say. But the verses that the king is reading is less important than the ceremony itself, right?
Because it says over here, the Torah is a testament.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here. But
for sure.
The kids there, it's a testimony.
Oh, so you could say like this: if the Torah is a testimony, then it's a testimony anyway, right? You know what? Just to bring everybody together and experience all of that. When you read from the Torah on Shabbos morning, it's not a testimony. When we read from the Torah this morning, Thursday morning, that's not a testimony. For sure, it is. It's the same thing. Why are we doing this? No, because this is something which is going to have the most incredible impact on the Jewish nation. Everybody's going to come. Everyone's going to hear. Everyone's going to listen. The children are going to be left with that incredible impression, right? Embossed on it's embossed on their souls, right? Did they understand what was going on? No, they didn't. Did they feel the Kedusha? Did they feel the holiness of what was going on? That for sure they did, right? The children become a part of the experience. Well, what does it mean when it says that neged kol yisrael ba'oznehem, that you should read the Torah ba'oznehem, into their ears, right? So
it's in their eyes.
It could, right? I mean, if you're going to listen, there's only one place you can listen from. Yeah. Your ears, right? You can't. I don't know about you, but you can't listen through your eyes, right? You can't listen through your nose. The only organ that God gave you, through your eyes. No, you can't listen through your eyes. You can see through your eyes.
But if you're saying to us, that you're going to bear testimony to the Torah, and their kids, and they won't be able to hear it, why aren't they saying use their eyes?
Because that would imply there's a different experience.
No. What did you say, Rabbi? What did you say?
I said maybe that opens the way for delivering the Torah through a mimetic experience, such as a play or something.
Oh, okay. Maybe. You know what? Maybe. That's interesting, right? If it says through your eyes, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe I'm going to take this a step further. If it says through your eyes, then maybe you're right. Maybe that then precludes the necessity to say the words. Just lift the Torah up. Let everybody see it, right? Like we do at the end of laning. Lift the Sefer Torah up. Everybody says v'zois haTorah, right? Well, like so maybe that's pshat. Maybe that is a pshat.
Like you said, there was too much noise. Okay, so they may not hear, but one thing will wake them up is the visual.
Here, so I think first of all, I think there's a practical problem over here, which is you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, right? The people at the back, however difficult it is to hear, it's going to be even more difficult to see, right?
Although, do you remember when they originally received the Torah, and they saw God, they died every time they heard a mitzvah?
Yeah.
So is that maybe why they're saying before them in their ears?
That what?
That they don't want to take away from them.
I don't think so. I think over here, I think there's something more. I'm not saying what you're saying is nice, right? I just think there's something more over here as well. The Torah says much earlier on. Here you mentioned Seder night. Now, the function of Seder night, says the Torah, leman tesaper ba'oznei bincha bein bincha, to tell over the story into the ears of your children and your grandchildren. Right? Now again, we're left with the same question, no? What do you
Because
mean,
your ear-
Laman Tasape Ba'ozni? Huh?
Your ear goes into your mind, and therefore you will bear testimony, and you remember what you saw.
Which means that every person's got their own ear.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody hears things according to their own ability and their own, their own level, right?
Your saying that might be different to my saying that, but we're still reading the same thing, but our ears hear differently.
Right. Which means that you'll hear it according to who you are. I'll hear it according to who I am.
Yeah.
And that's why when the Apostle talks about Seder night, it says the Mantasape Ba'ozne Bincho Ben Bincho, that when you come to the Seder night, you've got to speak to each child. Right? It's not enough to pitch your Seder night for, I don't know, the oldest child or the youngest child. You've got to pitch your Seder night to each child that's there. So you spend a little bit. It doesn't have to be every single thing. But each child should have the moment where they're understanding what Seder night's all about for their level. I think Pshat over here is that when it says Neged Kol Yisrael Ba'oznehem, that you have to read the Torah Ba'oznehem into their ears.
I like it.
Right? What's being said over here? That each person's going to hear whatever they hear, but each person's got to hear it.
Could you go one step further? Potentially. Each ear could potentially represent the Yitzhahara and the Yitzhak.
Maybe?
As in...
Maybe. There's Rav Yisrael Salanter, the founder of the Musa movement, he once said like this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you two ears.
Yeah.
He says one ear is for listening with and one ear is for not listening with. And then he said, right, in the chinuch, right, with children, and even in an educational atmosphere, he says sometimes the smartest thing you can ever do is not hear what somebody just said. Right? With kids, you hear it all the time, right? Kid says something stupid, a kid says something which is chutzpahdik, and if you react, it's going to turn into something enormous, right? And it really wasn't that important. It really wasn't. Sometimes the smartest thing that you can do is you heard just great, but you don't react. You didn't hear.
Or Lashon Hara, you just never heard if someone's mentioned something about someone.
Oh, very good, right? Lashon Hara, somebody says something that you should not be hearing. They shouldn't have said it, that's for sure, and you shouldn't have heard it. So you get yourself to the point as if you didn't hear it. You should know that the Chafetz Chaim says one of the most difficult things about Lashon Hara is when somebody tells you something, and now you know what they've just said, and you're not allowed to believe what you've just said, but to believe what you've just heard. And that's very difficult, it really is.
What do you mean?
Here, somebody says to you, oh, what's his name? He's such a thief, right? Now that's Lashon Hara. The problem now is that every time you see him, even if it's true, right? Lashon Hara is true.
You're not supposed to say anything, even if it's true.
Wait,
Here,
no,
listen.
If it's going to affect him somehow. Then
I'm just talking about, let's, you know what, fine, let's work out a general Lashon Hara scenario without getting too, let's not get too from over here, right? But if you want to say that it's going to help it, right? I'm just saying like this, you've got a situation where you hear something about somebody else, the person should never have told you. You don't need to know it. Every time you see that person now, that's going to pop into your mind, right? That's what the Chafetz Chaim says. Is one of the most difficult things to do is now you've heard that thing, is to discount what you heard. It's hard, right? It's really hard.
Psychologically, the guy that told it, you're right. You always.
Because you have something about him that's been told to you,
Yeah.
but you can't give it off. Let me ask you a question about Lashon Hara though. Let's say you get a call from one of your friends, and they want to be set up to somebody else,
Yeah.
or they want to marry somebody, and you're asked to give it. What's this person like?
Yeah.
Can you give Can you
You've
say
got,
the truth?
you've got to be very careful what you say. The Chafetz Chaim says like this, and I think this is a very important question. It really is. When somebody phones up and says, "Tell me about so and so," your first reaction has got to be, you've got to be more specific than that. That's such a non-defined question. What do you mean, tell me about so and so? What do you want to know? Right? So if they say, let's say your roommate, right? And you know him pretty well, and he's a great guy, but he's got a particular issue. I don't know, let's say a hygiene thing, or maybe an anger thing. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Are you obligated to tell the other side? Not necessarily. If they ask you directly, so then you have to answer. That's why when somebody says to tell me about him, you can't just say, oh, he's a great guy, except he never brushes his teeth. You can't say that.
1 second, so you can't. But that person's marrying the other person. You've got to be honest with them.
You've got to be honest, and you've got to be careful. right? Two different things. Which means if you're in possession of information which is important, I don't know. For example, your roommate, your roommate is on medication for some kind of a psychological disorder which is pretty serious, right? So then you need to say something. Maybe you don't need to say to them directly. Maybe you can pass the message through somebody else. If you don't want to do it, right? So you could pass the message through somebody else. Then for sure there's an obligation over here to say something. But what about if it's something that's I don't know, it's a big deal, it's not a big deal. A guy never brushes his teeth, so if people phone up and they say, tell me about him, you don't have to say that. If they say to you, we spoke with his dentist, and the dentist says he's got lousy teeth, why would that be? So that you can say, well, he doesn't brush his teeth very often.
But then you're at fault then, because they're going to come back to you and say, you weren't honest with me.
No. Here. The halacha is that you're not, so long as you answer the questions you've been asked, you're not at fault, unless we're talking about something which is definitely an issue that's bigger than, most things.
Yeah, but they're asking a question in reference to shidduch.
No.
It says, what can you tell me about this
No,
guy?
that's not a question in reference to a shidduch. That's not a question.
No, I'm talking about, let's say, the chassan. I want to know about it.
It's not a question. Here, you're in business, right?
Right.
Somebody you're hiring. You can't sit there you're following up references, right, before you meet the person, let's say, or after you've met the person for the first time. You can't phone up a reference and say, tell me about him. What kind of question is that? What do you want me to tell you, that he drinks 10 pints of beer a day? He's a great guy, he laughs. What do you want to know? Phoning from business, right? So you want to know specifics. Does he work with a team? Is he personable?
Yes,
right? Is he honest? Oh, is he honest? Right? Those are things that you need to know as a businessman. You need to know that.
Personally, it's not right.
Huh?
Anything personal, you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Because then you're taken away from the shidduch if you say anything.
Potentially.
No, but talking about business.
Let me ask you a question.
But here I'm saying
right. You happen to be right, because
what do you mean I happen to be right?
I cannot
I'm always right.
I cannot ask references from somebody in business, but talking about the United States. How's his work habits? Which you can answer that. Very good, blah, blah. I cannot ask, does he have a drinking problem? Does he have a drug problem?
But then you're walking into a situation where...
No, so here we're talking about two different things.
No.
Talking about two different things over here, right? In a shidduch situation...
Sorry for the tangent.
No. In a shidduch situation, if the person's got an addiction problem, you need to say, even if nobody asked you.
Oh, but in the business world, you don't say.
In the business world, it depends whether it's applicable. Right here, in the same way, I need to know in the business world. I need to know whether this guy has got good sales. Has he got a good sales technique? Right, that's what I need to know.
No,
in a shidduch situation, I don't need to know whether he's got a good sales technique. I need to know whether he's got a drug addiction. Right. But all I'm saying is like this: when you ask a generic question, tell me about him, you're not asking anything at all. You're really not.
Let's say you know somebody, right? And they were in a relationship, and they're about to get engaged with somebody else. No, as in they got to get engaged to this person they were in the relationship with. But you know that during the time they were in the relationship, they may have done something else. Are you obligated to tell?
I don't know. It's a very interesting question. It's a very grey area, and I think it's something that needs to be bounced off of a halakhic authority to see exactly what your obligations are. It's not a yes or no answer. It really isn't. I'll tell you more.
The question is, do they ask about him, and then do you volunteer that? Oh,
yeah, you gotta be careful.
No,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Here,
what he did when he was single.
There's no. I don't think there's any one size fits all answer to any of these questions, right?
That's true.
Which means here, you may have this boy's going out with a girl, and this girl's got her own past everybody knows about, and this boy's got his own past that everybody knows about, and if that's the case, then obviously these things are not that important, right?
Yeah.
But this boy may be going out. He may have been a real, like a real Casanova, yeah. And he's going out with a girl who's she's very sheltered. She's very pure, Maybe somebody does need to draw their attention to
Then you would ask the rabbi to draw it.
For sure, yeah. You don't have to do that.
Well, what does the rabbi say? I mean,
That's a rabbi. It's a rabbi's problem, right? Which means that the
but
rabbi.
I'm saying he's also involved, just like
But you have to understand that if the rabbi's got an obligation to say something, then he's got to say it. How he's going to say it, that's the rabbi's problem. How am I going to word this exactly? Good. Okay, that comes with the territory of being a rabbi.
Do you talk about their past life? For example, let's say that someone comes up to you and says, "How religious are they?" Do you say, "Yeah, they're very nice. They go to Shachar," or do you say, "They used to be about to shoot, they used to be not from, now they're about to shoot"?
No, there's absolutely no need to bring up information like that unless you're asked directly. Which means the person says to you, "How from is this guy?" You only how from is he? He davens 3 times a day, and he puts on his tefillin and he goes to learn. He's great. If they say to you, "Has he always been this from?" So then you say, well, you should know that 5 years ago he started the process. He really wasn't very frum, and then 5 years ago he began a process and he started becoming much frummer. Yeah. Otherwise, you don't have to volunteer information like that. No.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe another time we'll continue this conversation about what kind of questions we should ask before we get married.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Let's continue.
You're not trying to get us back on track, are you? That was very subtle. They phone and ask me about you for Shidduchim. I'll say he's very subtle, Very focused, a very focused young man. Here. Hakeles ha'am anashim v'anashim v'atat v'gech Hashem yisholech l'man yishmu v'l'aman yidu v'yiru Hashem Elokeichem v'shamu la'asois es kol divrei ha'Torah azois. The function of what's going on. Can you imagine? The emphasis, maybe it's a little bit hard for us because I don't think we really appreciate what a king represents today. Monarchy today is something which is really just some kind of titular thing at the head, like the queen. Everyone looks up to the queen, but at the end of the day, what does she do? She goes around opening supermarkets and
paid to wave people.
Whatever. Yeah, she pays, and then she pays people to do it for her, right?
Yeah,
exactly. In the olden days, the king. Can you imagine? Everyone's coming to this place to hear the king read from the Torah. Can you imagine what kind of an impact that is? The Torah is more important than the king. You hear? That's what it's saying. The king, the king's most important person in the whole of that country, the whole of Israel. The king is the most important person. He's the most powerful person, and yet he's got to stand up. Then he has to read from the Torah, right? Yeah.
It's in a relationship to Shoftim, when it said make a king over you or something like that. When God announced that somebody would be the king.
Yeah.
Is this king therefore the bypass between us and God, between the people and God?
The king is supposed to be a representative of what kingship is really like, so that we can understand what God being our king is all about. You should know that one of the biggest problems that we have now in all of these generations that have come, right, is that we get to Rosh Hashanah and we talk about crowning our HaKadosh Baruch Hu as our king, and we don't really understand what that means. I mean, we understand what's Parshat. Intellectually we understand, but emotionally, do we really believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the king? King holds life and death over you, right? King's an incredibly powerful personality. Do we really understand what it means?
Probably not.
So I think that we probably don't. I really do. Paradoxically, if you come from a country that's ruled by a dictator, so then you have a much better understanding of what a king is than we do. When you live in democracy, then even Obama, right? So he's a powerful fellow. He really is. But in a few years' time, that's it. He's gone. He's finished, and then the king is dead. Long live the king, and start off with another one all over again.
The sooner the better.
Yishmu v'lamdu v'liyira es Hashem Elokeichem. All of this is going to happen in Israel. So what's interesting is that here in Israel, in the state of Israel, every Shemitah year, at the end of the Shemitah year, so Mitzvah Hashem, next year, the president of the state of Israel they again, you know, in the great big court, that what's it called? That
Knesset.
no, not in the Knesset, by the Kotel. That you know, the what's it called? That courtyard to the Knesset over there,
By the
to the Kotel over there, right?
The Wailing Wall.
But before that, right, that whole area, right, including the approachway. So they set up over there. They set up a you know, like a bima, and the president of that was a Freudian slip. The president of the state of Israel, he does this, the hakel. And it's done, you know, in front of the prime minister is there, and the chief rabbis are there, and it's you know, even though, yeah, the whole idea. So the whole idea of the hakel is what? Is to leave us with this incredible feeling of the importance of the Torah. The Torah supersedes everything. Even the king has got to stand up over there like everybody else, and he's got to read the Torah to everybody, and we've all got to listen, and he's got to say it clearly, and if you know, he's got to learn how to read it properly. It's a little bit like having a bar mitzvah, I guess, right? You know, the king's got to learn all over again, and then he's going to stand up and say, you know, today I am a man. But that's that's a bar mitzvah speech, right?
Shaul ever made that speech?
Hakel, yeah. Oh no, Shaul only ruled for 2 years. Yeah.
Why?
Shaul's reign was only for 2 years, because after he made the mistake with Agag, the kingdom was taken away from him, given over to King David instead. And as far as I can remember, you know what, I'll try to look it up, but as far as I can remember, though, I don't think those 2 years coincided with the Hakel. I don't think it did. Whatever, I can look it up. Here, let's go weiter. Verse number 14. Vayom Hashem Moshe, hein kovu yamecha lamut. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not leaving anything up to the imagination over here. Right? He's saying you're going to die. Karais Yoshua v'yisyatzu bo'ol moed v'atzavenu. Bring Yoshua to the oil moed, to the tent of meeting, and what's going to happen is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give instruction to Yoshua whilst Moshe is still alive, so that nobody can come afterwards and say, you know what, this Yoshua is a nice guy, but I don't know, he just doesn't cut it, you know? I think we should have somebody else. Because what are they seeing? They're seeing the transference of power, and they're seeing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going along with that transference of power as well.
The meeting that they keep on going on about.
The tent of meeting was a tent where all of the important public forums would take place.
So therefore, everybody saw God.
No, what would happen in the tent of meeting was that people would be, they wouldn't hear anything and they wouldn't see anything, but they would have some kind of an awareness that God is speaking to Moshe at that point. It's kind of a, you know, when you've got a feeling about something, but you can't
It's like you're
put
waiting,
your finger on it.
Like,
He goes into the tent.
Yeah.
And then he comes out.
Yeah, the clouds would come down, which means that everybody can see that something's going on, but nobody knows what's going on. And then when the clouds lift themselves up, and Moshe would come out, or in this case, Yoshua would come out, and he would tell the people what it is that he's heard. Vayelech Moshe v'Yoshua v'yisyatzu bo'ol moed. V'yera Hashem bo'ol ba'amud anon v'amud anon al pesach ha'oil. So the cloud comes down and settles down on top of the tent. Vayom Hashem al Moshe incha shoicheves im avuisecho. You're going to be. Here it says, it's just biblical language for you're going to die. V'kama amazeh v'zanu acher necha oretz asher hu bo shama b'kirboy v'azavani v'hefez berisi asher karati itoi. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives over a little bit of news to Moshe that really isn't so great. It really isn't. He says, read. He says the people after you die, at some point in the future, the people are going to go off. They're going to go off the derech. They're going to start doing things they shouldn't be doing. V'chora api, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, my anger will flare up against them. Now remember, who remembers this? Charon af. It refers to what?
Red heifer.
No. Charon af is the ultimate anger of God. Wrath. The wrath of God. Did I say that good? Is that good? Yeah. But when is the wrath of God? When is it applicable? We discussed this the other day. Only with one thing, right? Idolatry, right? Only with idol worship. Only then does the wrath of God, this Charon af, this is like, you can't get more angry than this. This is the spitz anger, right? Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'chara pi voy b'yoyim ahu, v'azavtim, v'hisati panai mehem, v'ayale echolo matza'u ra'ois rabois v'tzarois, v'oyim b'yom ahu, aloi al ki ein Elohai b'kirbi, v'tzanu ha'rois ha'ele. That after the Jewish people have done what they've done, they will then realize that they've lost God. Yipshat, which means that in the meantime, whilst they're doing it, they're not paying any attention to God. But as God distances himself from the Jewish people, as God draws away from the Jewish people, and again, drawing away means that the further away HaKadosh Baruch Hu is from us, the worse it is for us, right? The closer Hashem is, the better it is. Which means that we're going to recognize, we're going to see this, we're going to see all of a sudden, we're going to feel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not together with us anymore. V'anochi haster astir panai b'yom hahu akol hara she'asa. And says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I will, here, how do they translate this? I will surely have concealed my face. That's probably the best way that you can translate it into English. But in Hebrew it says, haster astir panai, I will conceal the concealment. I will conceal and conceal.
What does it mean, conceal and conceal?
It is the absolute level. This is as bad as it gets, right?
Does it say conceal and conceal? Does it say conceal twice?
Yeah. It's
So
not a
firstly,
double negative.
First, I will conceal to you, even when you're at that situation in time. Then, when you repent, I will also conceal to you.
No, that's not what it's saying. It's talking about a level of concealment.
There's like no other level.
That's it, right? So, for example, we would say, I don't think you can say very, very conceal, right? But I will very conceal myself, as opposed to just conceal myself. It's a haster astir panai. Gone, finished, right?
Don't expect miracles.
Don't expect miracles. Don't expect overt miracles, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always helping us out somehow.
But then
right?
how can you say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu always loved us and he's the most amazing person and he always believed in us? Actually, the second you go away from him, he'll go away from you.
No, so the pshat is like this. The emphasis, that's what it sounds like. That's not really what's going on is like this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always there. You know the way that the sages describe HaKadosh Baruch Hu's relationship with us, that we are always we're all the same distance from Hashem. The question is whether our actions are building some kind of a fence between us.
But then I thought this has come to mind, is that it's like you say on Yom Kippur when you say Anila Dodele, I am my beloved as my beloved is to me. If you conceal yourself from God, he'll conceal himself from you.
Absolutely, which means like this, right? How does the verse go? Anila doidi.
Yeah.
You've got to be the God. I am to my beloved. V'doidi li.
As my beloved is to me. Yeah.
Right? So here, the most beautiful thing, the Baal Tanya says like this. You know where is that? It's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. Anila doidi v'doidi li, and it spells out Elul.
Yeah.
Right? The first letter spells out Elul. There's a pasuk earlier on in Perek Beis which says doidi li v'ani loi, which says that my beloved is to me and I am to him. Right? So obviously you can't use that to spell out Elul because it wouldn't work. It would spell out Dulul instead, which doesn't work, right? Yeah. But there's something very deeper with it. Baal Tanya says the most incredible idea. He says Elul is me showing HaKadosh Baruch Hu that I want to be together with him. Anila doidi, v'doidi li. And then he says the Aseres Yemei Tshuva, that time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, is doidi li v'ani lo. That's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows me that he wants to be together with me. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu making the first move.
So
right?
you're saying by the Baal Tanya, up to the point of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, you're making an idol.
You've got to do it,
you've
right?
got to make the movement.
But once you've shown HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you'll do it, then at that point, it's the other way around. Doidi li v'ani loi. It's a very beautiful idea, it really is. But to a certain extent, you're right. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's relationship with us reflects our relationship with him, not the other way around. Right? And it says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when you go worshipping idols, haster astir panai. From the time of the destruction of the first temple, we've been living in a state of hester panim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's concealment. And the first temple, there were overt miracles going on. In the first temple, people came to Yerushalayim just to be inspired by what they saw. All of that disappeared with the destruction of the first temple, not the second one, the first one. For 2,500 years, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's been in a state of what's called Hester Panim. The story of Purim is all about HaKadosh Baruch Hu being hidden. I don't know if you're familiar with the Megillah, right? But in the Megillah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name doesn't appear anywhere because it's all hidden inside there somewhere. Ask the Gemara, Esther, the name Esther, where does it come from? Where do we see it alluded to in the Torah? So it says over here, Aster Panai. Esther, Astir. You hear the connection between the two.
It's amazing.
Esther is the one who helps to reveal HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in the world because everything is hidden away. It's something.
And we are kind of shaliach to that.
Yeah, it's up to us, right? Up to each and every one of us to try to break down the barriers that have been built in order to be able to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Shlomo HaMelech says that King Solomon says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is peeking at us through the cracks in this barrier that we've erected. It's not him. We've done it with our sins. Not I don't mean we here in this room. The opposite. Here in this one, we're trying to take down the barrier. But the Jewish people in general over the generations have built up this barrier between ourselves and Hashem, and there are cracks. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu's looking at us through the cracks. He's watching us. He's there. We just have to take the barrier down. Va'ata kisvu lachem es hashira azois v'lomda es b'nei Yisrael sima b'fiem. The shira, this song that's been spoken about in Mitzvah Hashem, is going to be next week's Parsha, Parshas Hazinu, which we'll talk about next week, not now, right? And here, Ki avienu el ha'adoma asher nishbati la'avosav, on the next page 1098. I'm going to bring you to this land. Zavas chalav udvash v'chal v'savav adashen. Ufan Elohim achirim v'avadum v'atzuni v'hefes brisi. Listen to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying.
But then he said, and turn to God.
Listen to this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, I'm going to bring you to the most beautiful land, and I'm going to give you everything you need. And what are you people going to do? You're going to turn around and start worshipping other gods.
Oh, come on. That's not...
That's exactly what happened.
But this is not this is not a God that always says, oh yeah, every time I wipe my slate clean with you.
Yes.
This is someone who's already prejudging us. Even before he's taken us to a situation.
He's telling us that this is the danger of what is going to be, yeah.
But don't forget, you have a choice.
Oh, right?
Well,
Which means you should know that the biggest blessing that you can give to somebody is to tell them what their weaknesses are.
Okay,
The
fine,
biggest bracha,
right now.
here, for example, Yaakov Avinu, when he gives brachas to his children, right? So the first one comes in, Reuven comes in, he says, Reuven, you're a great guy, but you're not very stable, you know that? And then Shimon and Levi come and he says, you people, you're great, except you happen to be a pair of homicidal maniacs. Right? I mean, I'm paraphrasing. Yeah? But when you again, you've got to be careful when you say it. Yaakov waited until the day he died. You understand? It's not as a rule, people don't want to hear these things, right? You want to hear how great you are. I don't want to hear how rotten you are. Aside from that, we don't have time. And to say how great you are takes a couple of moments. But to say how rotten you all are, that's going to take forever. We don't have time for that right now. But Yehipshat, there are moments, right? What's his name? Moshe Rabbeinu is also going to give a little bit of mussar to the Jewish people as he's about to die, which is what the bracha v'zois, the Parsha of v'zois bracha, that's what it is. And also you'll say over there, well, that's a bracha? And the answer is, yeah, that's the biggest bracha there is. It really is. But yeah, ki simtzeno oisoi rois rabois v'tois v'onsa ashira azois lefonov le'eid. Ki loi tishachach mipi zaroi. Ki yadati es yitzroy asher hu oisa ayon betem avienu ala oretz asher nishbati. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is promising that what? That will always be remembered inside of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what you were concerned about. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's like, he's becoming a little bit vengeful over here, right?
Yeah.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu's saying, the bris, this connection between ourselves is always going to be there. But you've got to know what's required of you. Right? Like Moshe said, right? We all have free will. We can do what we're supposed to do. We can't do what we're supposed to do.
Moshe spent the past two Parshot telling them what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants.
Yeah.
So why does he then say, actually, do you know what? Everything Moshe says is not true. This is what I want of you.
No, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying like this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching the Jewish people that here, you're going to listen to this stuff and you think you're going to be okay. And I'm telling you, you're human beings and human beings have their problems, right? They have their weaknesses. And this is, if you're not careful, this is what's going to happen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, I'm doing it all for you, right? I'm going to bring you into this land. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. It's going to be good. It's going to be great. And then what are you people going to do?
And then right, I've got you now. And you're saying up to, I will go in your land. I will let you have the land. Up to that point. And then it says, and turn to gods of others. That's when it comes to your decision.
Yeah, absolutely. You hear paradoxically, it's an interesting thing. Paradoxically, when things are too good, we tend to lose sight of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Isn't it interesting? You would have thought if things were great, right? So you wouldn't have to concentrate on anything. You could just concentrate on being connected to God because life is going great and everything is good.
Yeah, but that's too easy. Because once you got what you want, you turn away from it. You've got everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
I was wondering I was wondering what the Hebrew, the way the text looks, because in English it looks like it uses shall.
Yeah.
As in, this is going to happen.
Yeah. So the emphasis is like this. The truth is that Kodesh Baruch Hu is telling it over as something which seems to be definitive. It really is, right? However, you need to know that in the realms of Nevuah, in the realms of prophecy, only good prophecies have to come to fruition. Bad ones don't. I mean, that's the function of prophecy. What does God do? He sends a prophet down and he says, tell the Jewish people they're a bunch of bums. And if they don't do what they're supposed to do, I'm going to, destroy their temple and I'm going to take them out of their land. Yeah? HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want to do that. So he's telling the Jewish people that this is if you're not careful, this is a progression. This is the way it's going to be. Right? It's something, I think it's kind of disturbing. I really do. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to take care of everything. It's going to be good. And you'll end up abusing what it is that I'm doing for you. That's pretty sad, right? That's who we are. I mean, it's not just us, that's human nature in general.
Seems very similar to what's something that you read on Tish B'Av?
The kinot.
No.
Oh, Eicha.
Eicha. It seems here very similar to Eicha.
In a certain way, it's a precursor.
Yeah.
Eicha doesn't here. You know what? I think that's a very apt thing, right? Eicha does not appear in a vacuum out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Eicha is built upon the actions of the Jewish people, and the actions of the Jewish people are being spelled out over here as well. You're right. I think, you know what? Let's go out on a limb over here, right? If this wasn't here, then maybe Eicha could not have been written in the way that it was written. It requires this over here. It requires this knowledge over here to be able to write Eicha in the way that it's written. Right now, Kodesh Baruch Hu is saying to write out the shira again. What is a shira? Next page of Mitzvah Hashem, we'll talk about it next week. You see that it's written in a very specific way. That's the way that it looks in the Sefer Torah as well. It's written like a poem, which is really what it is. It's something the language is very, very poetical. Vayitzav es Yehoshua bin Nun, vayomer chazak v'yamatz ki ata tavi es bnei Yisrael el ha'aretz asher nishbati lehem v'anochi ehyeh moch. And then he's got to give a bracha again to Yehoshua. There's like a sense of the Jewish people have to know that Yehoshua is going to be acting under the auspices of God.
He wants to reinforce that.
For
sure, right?
With Moshe, they never would reinforce that.
Because what's the difference? By Moshe, there is no doubt whatsoever that Moshe Rabbeinu is the mouthpiece of God. None.
But was it that might be the issue?
That what?
That they never had this whole hand everything when this is your leader, Moshe. So they didn't know that he was their leader. With Joshua, they know that he's their leader.
They know that Moshe is their leader. They know that very well. He's taken them through the desert, and they know that Moshe is the ultimate.
From the time he went out of Egypt.
He is the ultimate leader. There's never been a leader like Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's exactly why it has to be reiterated over here that what you've had up until now, it's not going to be the same. Right? Moshe is saying, when I pass away, things are going to be very, very different, and don't think that that's because the wrong person is leading you.
That's statistical.
I'm saying it. The emphasis, you're right. I'm saying it the wrong way. I'm just saying it in the way that we can understand it clearly, right? He's being commanded by God to do this, right? And he has to write this whole thing from the beginning. He's being commanded now to write the Sefer Torah out from beginning to end.
But why in verse 27 is he going back to this whole rebellious thing?
1 second. Okay, right. You're not jumping ahead, are you?
Me? Never.
No. Vayitzav Moshe es haLevim noisei Aron bris Hashem leimor. Lakoyach es Sefer HaTorah hazeh v'samtem osoi mitzad Aron bris Hashem Elokechem v'yasham b'chol ha'eid. It says, on the last day of his life, Moshe Rabbeinu wrote 13 Sifrei Torah. Again, it's a miracle. Don't try to understand this in simple terms. 12 were given out to the Shvatim, to the different tribes, and 1 was given to the Levim to put next to the Aron Kodesh, and that was going to be the Sefer Torah that all the other Sifrei Torah were going to be checked by. right? That's like the prototype. Ki anochi adati es meriecho ve'es orpecho akoshe hein boidenu chayim achem ayoyim amrim ayisem im Hashem v'af ki achem oisi. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, listen guys, I'm under no illusions over here. Right? You people rebelled. Whilst I was still alive, you people rebelled. So you rebel when I'm dead. You need to know that Kadosh Baruch Hu is watching what's going on. It fits in very neatly over here. He's saying like this: the whole function of these few psukim over here is now to put the emphasis on the Sefer Torah, to know that the Sefer Torah is going to be that's the thing that's going to keep the Jewish people together. That's our center, right? Says Moshe Rabbeinu, though, but you should know, right, that I know that if you were able to rebel whilst I was leading you,
I was alive.
But how is it a bracha?
Who says it's a bracha?
At no point in time, during the whole time that Moshe spoke to the Jewish people, it never at one point just gave them a bracha.
Not yet. At the end, in the last parsha of the whole of the Chumash, which is actually called V'zot HaBracha, over there Moshe is going to give a bracha to each tribe. But right now, Moshe Rabbeinu is more concerned. He knows it's the last day of his life. He's got to use his time very, very carefully in order to give over all the messages that he wants them to have.
Fine.
So here, listen, there's a very beautiful idea of it. First, give over the negative stuff. End with the positive stuff.
You just said it the other way.
When?
Just before when you were saying...
No, I'm saying following the Parshas over here, right? So here he's giving a little bit of mussar, right? He's giving a couple of slaps around the cheek.
Which he doesn't need to do them because God's already given them it.
No, they need to hear it from him as well, because when Moshe tells them something, that's something that they can relate to very clearly, because Moshe is their leader. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu does it, that's like, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, well, what's the pshat? God is God, right? You can't mess around with God. There's no leeway with God. But when Moshe says something, we expect God to get angry when we don't do things properly, right? But when Moshe comes and he tells us stuff like this, we need to listen. And then at the end of all of this, what does Moshe do? Gives a bracha.
Then surely one of the most amazing things about Moshe's leadership is his MS.
For sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because he wasn't scared to say whatever.
Absolutely. Right? He said whatever needs to be said, he's going to say it. Even though, Moshe was never interested in being the leader to begin with. And he's not going to win any popularity contests over here with the way that he speaks throughout the 40 years to the Jewish people. But that's okay, because he had Aaron by his side for most of this, right? Aaron is the one who's going to soften Moshe's approach. Hikiru elai es kol ziknei shiftechem v'shoitrechem v'adabra boznehem eis hadvarim ha'ele v'ida bom es hashamayim v'es ha'aretz, and he's bringing the heavens and the earth to serve as witnesses. Again, the heavens and the earth, they stick around, right? Generations come and generations go.
Witnesses against them.
Witnesses that you were told all of this. Don't come later and say, well, we never knew. You hear? It's very important to understand this. It really is, right? Ki yadati achei moisi ki ashcheis tashchisum v'satem min haderech asher tzivisi eschem v'karas eschem hara b'acharis hayomim ki ta'asu es hara b'einei Hashem le'achisoi b'masei yedeichem.
But again, he even commands us it.
Huh?
By saying, look, gather to me the elders and the royal tribe and the officers, and I shall speak the word and say, for I know that after my death you will surely act corrupt and you will stray from the path that I have commanded you.
Yeah.
Who's he to say that I commanded you? It was God that commanded them.
No,
You're right. You're right. But there are moments when Moshe's right now, Moshe's not speaking necessarily in the name of God. They know this. They know that God is telling them. They know this, right? Moshe's now adding his what do you want to call it? His 2 cents worth. He's telling them, Moshe's getting up and he's saying to them, listen, guys, I know you. I've led you for the last 40 years. I know who you are.
But let's say the Prime Minister is about to leave his office. He's not going to stand up and say, you're all idiots. He's not going to stand up and say, all of you, during my years as Prime Minister, you've all done wrong. This is what you've done wrong.
I'll tell you something. If the Prime Minister really cared, or the President really cared about his nation, when he was leaving office, he would get up and he would say, Rabbi Sai, I want you to know, it's been my privilege to be able to lead you, and I want you to know that throughout the years that I've been leading you, you've done things which were wrong. And if you're not careful, you'll end up doing them again and again and again.
They did. They rebelled against Moshe when he was alive, and he's bringing it out. He says, "You gave me."
What do you mean, who is he?
What do you
Moshe
mean, he
is
is God's-
Moshe. Here, look at the 13 principles of faith, right? The Rambam writes there was never anybody like Moshe, and there will be never. Listen very carefully. It's very important to understand this. We spoke about it the other day. No, Moshe is a humble man. He's not a stupid man.
But
He
he's
knows-
not humble.
He definitely is.
I don't think he is. If he's saying, this is my path that I led you on, that I did this, and then comes Hashem.
Here, because he's already told them what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to do. And now he's saying, listen, guys, I'm telling you, I know you. I gave you all these commandments. I saw the way you behaved when I gave them to you.
And he got him from God.
Right? Imagine if you do this whilst I'm around, what are you going to do? What are you going to do when I'm not around? That's really what he's saying. Is that egotistical? I don't think so. That's just telling it like it is. Right? I'll give you an example. You've got somebody who teaches what's called 11th grade, right? Just the year before the end, right? And the teacher's a disciplinarian. He's a tough guy. And the last day of school, if he really cares about his students, right? He's going to turn around and say, guys, he says, I wish you every success in 12th grade in your last year in school. He says, I'm just a little bit concerned. Because the teacher for 12th grade is not as strict as I am. And you people behaved pretty badly when I was teaching you. I don't know. Imagine what you're going to do over there. Don't do it. It's important that you don't do it, right? Isn't that what he needs to say? If he really cares about him, isn't that what he really needs to say? Is that egotistical? I don't think so.
No.
And that's what Moshe's doing. Moshe's coming along and saying, listen, guys, Yoshua is not me. I know who I am. Nobody knew how great Moshe Rabbeinu was more than Moshe Rabbeinu. He knew exactly what his abilities were. He knew exactly what his achievements were. And he knew that Yoshua's coming along. He's not Moshe Rabbeinu. He knew that.
He was a robot to God. That's really everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
It says, the Gemara says, that God spoke out of the throat of Moshe Rabbeinu. Which is, when Moshe Rabbeinu spoke, they knew that this was God. And Moshe knows that it's not going to be like that ever again. It won't be like this. You know, the Rambam writes when the Mashiach should come, Mitzvah should come very, very soon, right? You're supposed to say Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. I think if you have to tell people to say Amen, so maybe it detracts a little bit from the significance of it. But whatever.
Say it again.
The Mashiach should come very,
Amen.
very soon, right?
Amen.
but the Rambam writes that the Mashiach will be Moshe. He'll be like Moshe. He's not going to be a Moshe Rabbeinu. Means like, but not exactly the same. Yeah, Moshe is a one-off. There's never been anybody like Moshe. There never will be anyone like Moshe. Moshe knows that. He knows it better than anybody else. And he's turning around to them and he's saying, listen, guys, what can I tell you? Yoshua, he's great. He really is, but he's not me.
And he with humbleness. Yes.
Right? And if you did this stuff whilst I was in charge, imagine what you're going to do once I'm gone. And you know what? He was right. Right? Last verse. Oh, not bad. We're not too late. And he tells over the Shira, and he meets Hashem. That's what we're going to see next week. Right? Next week, we've only got a few days before Rosh Hashanah, so it's Mitzvah Hashem Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday we'll have a class. And hopefully we'll be able to get through Parshat Hazinu, which again, the biggest problem with Parshat Hazinu is the language is very, very poetic. Right? So we have to we'll try to learn it. In Mitzvah Hashem, we'll get there. In the meantime, everyone should have a wonderful Shabbos. Tomorrow, of course, is the best day of the week because I don't have to come in here. And we'll meet back. We'll meet back in Mitzvah Hashem on Sunday, bleary-eyed, hungover.
I'm wishing we were
Wishing we were anywhere else but here.
Good job.
Good. Everyone should have a wonderful Shabbos.